south there when they tried to get
I'll
that
move,
thing.
yes.
You know,
Oh, my feet crushed.
we played the big jazz concert, the two of us, and we were going to become famous. And Davy Bates played the center and I played the center. And Teddy Wilson was a top piano player in the country then, jazz piano player. And we played his concert, and the Baltimore newspaper wouldn't print it because it was black and white there.
Oh, sure.
You believe that? The only place that got it printed, I never got a copy, was the Afro-American. But I didn't realize then, in those days, that the prejudice, I didn't know about it. Because we'd go down to the black end of town and play and this and that. And, we were always welcome. Here comes the jazz boys, Nobody ever bothered us, nothing. And when I played Benny Benjamin's, I used to have to take a tractor's trolley home, in downtown Baltimore, which was slummy in there. I'd have my tenor sax in a leather carrying bag. Nobody ever bothered me. And when I played down in the waterfront, I helped out a woman down there, piano player, which you wouldn't even walk to there. I had that saxophone in my arm, took trackless trolley, never bothered. You wouldn't do that today, you know what I mean? I just didn't know any better. It's wonder I never got killed quite a few times.
It's a miracle.
Jeez.
You had an angel watching over you, Dad. You're damn lucky. I don't think I would have pulled that ever.
What?
I would have never pulled that. I wouldn't have the balls enough to pull that off.
Well, some of the people I work with may still be in Miami, I'm not sure. Jimmy Wiley, the bass player, called one time, but he wanted to drive up here, and he wanted to sit in with JoJo and the Bodyguards, and I knew they wouldn't allow it. They never allowed anybody to sit in. Come up and play with you. They never allowed anybody. Plus they did their own thing, their own way, and
they wanted to...
And you couldn't play with them if you didn't know their way.
Right, of course not.
And
I guess that was a big deal to do.
well,
something.
Jimmy Wiley, I'm sure, is dead because he was 4 or 5 years older than me. He's the guy in the picture out there, the bald-headed guy.
Yeah.
We had a lot of nerve, I'll tell you. A lot of nerve. Good Lord.
Yes, you did.
I didn't know any better.
Well, it's all right. You're lucky you didn't get drafted and all that other stuff. I know they tried to, but you're lucky you had a busted eardrum and flat feet.
Well, I'd play with...
You could have been gone easily in World War II.
Slam Stewart, who was the best-known bass player in the world. Art Tatum, the best piano player. Of course, I didn't play then with Farlow because Bob Huffman was our guitar player, and he's the one Tatum who used to always watch. He'd say,
Crazy.
I didn't know that till years later. He was ended up in the asylum. He was crazy.
That's the way it goes. He was right.
He had some funny ways about it, but I never knew he was crazy. He'd write songs. And he could write songs and play them on the piano. And
He's back. What's the camera for?
Tatum.
Oh, you recording
Tatum
it?
could hear stuff.
Is that what the hell you're doing? Yeah.
And Tatum said, if he could get it out of his fingers, he'd be a top guitar player, a great guitar player. He said it's in his head. He can't quite get it out of his fingers. He could hear that as he's playing. He could see a little bit. Tatum could. He drank like a damn fish. I know I bought him beer. 75 cents a bottle, that was a lot of money. That was at the Three Deuces in New York.
Sure, back then it was
my
probably
God.
10 times the amount of
We used to go up there. Farlow died, a couple other guys, I can't remember who owned. go around the 52nd Street and go into jazz clubs. Well, Farlow was starting to get known around the country. He was starting, you know, he wasn't a name then. He was getting known just from people coming into where he was playing. And, hey, this guy's something else, you know. He was that good.
Right.
And he was a funny guy. He played the guitar. He didn't play like anybody else. He played up this high. The guitar be flat sideways, flat out, and it fell like this. And he'd stand up and
Played it sideways then, huh?
play it different. Play it.
I think a couple people do that nowadays.
And he never rated #1, but he rated #2 in the country under Les Paul. And Les Paul was not really a great jazz player. You know, you who know what I mean by Les Paul?
The guy that made the guitars.
Yeah, Les Paul and Mary Ford. Well, Les Paul is a fancy guitar player, but it's not real modern jazz that he plays. It's just a good fancy. He's a good. They call it jazz. They win the jazz polls, but not like Farlow. You know, not clever jazz. Farlow was way ahead of his time.
Didn't you say Farlow used to do tours and stuff, concerts? Not concerts, but tours, what do you want to say, gigs overseas? Didn't he go to Europe?
He did play in Europe. Well, Ellen and I went to his house. Went to visit up in New Jersey on our way up north on our trip.
And how was that visit?
And I never did meet his wife. I think she was sick, but he had a big house. And he played a little guitar for us, you know, and that different. They make a Tal Farlow guitar, Gibson does.
Oh, they make a Tal Farlow
Yeah,
guitar.
Tal Farlow.
Wow. Well, you have to be pretty famous for somebody to name a
Well, he got really famous for a little bit in the world of jazz. Not in pop music, you know. But Les Paul, you know who he was?
Yeah, you said that was a guitar maker.
Oh yeah, he had hit records everywhere, held best Paul and Mary Ford, because he invented the multiple tracking stuff, you know, where she could do 6 or 7 voices all at once. They'd all blend, you know, and the guitar, he'd sound like 4 guitars playing. He invented all that stuff.
Oh, the recording.
He's still alive, I think.
The recording part of it.
He's 96 or something like that, but
That's pretty
still
good.
plays.
Wow.
He goes around and plays New York to jam sessions. He's not really a modern jazz guy, but he was a very fancy guitar player. You know, he's very impressive. It wasn't jazz that we played. It wasn't real modern jazz, but he played, well, you ever hear of Django Reinhardt?
No.
Well, Django was the guy that changed the world of guitar playing. He was a Frenchman. He played an acoustic guitar, wasn't electric. And the group was called the Hot Club of France. And the Hot Club of France got very, very popular. It had Django Reinhardt, the guitar player, and Stephen Graffelli, the violin player. And they played old American songs with the bass and the drummer and everything like that. And they were very popular. They were a different type of jazz. They were gypsy jazz, sort of. Very flowery and good, you know. And I played just for fun of it. We used to get this one guy who, that was his entire life, was Django Reinhardt. He was a guitar player in Baltimore. And that's how he played a lot like Django Reinhardt.
That's an interesting name.
And I don't know whatever happened to him. I think it's been a long time ago, these people.
Well, they're probably...
And I knew up in Baltimore. I knew a lot of people those days. And he was good.
Was it common for people to be named Django back then?
Huh?
Where did that first name come from, Django? I know it came from...
I don't know.
That's a weird name.
A gypsy, maybe.
Huh? It's foreign. Oh, it has to be something. Yeah.
Well, he didn't play.
Okay.
He didn't play electric guitar. He played flat, you know, regular
He said
guitar.
acoustics.